pleasure to welcome you all to a lecture on a post-colonial reading on Christianity and colonialism in India before 1600 and its relevance today by Clara Joseph. So it has been put forward by the English department of St. Berkman's College. Before we begin, let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. My name is Nina Abraham, and I'm accompanied by my co-host, Dan George. So over to you, Dan.
Well, good evening, one and all. Thank you, Nina. Here are just a few guidelines that the participants are kindly requested to keep in mind to ensure the smooth conduct of today's program. All the questions that are intended for the Q&A sessions are to be posted in the chat box addressing it to everyone. A feedback form will be posted at the end of the webinar in the chat box in both Zoom and YouTube. These certificates will be issued for the participants who fill the form, and it will be issued immediately. And if any participant have not received their certificates within 3 days, then only shall they contact the organizing committee. Since all the personal details are to be entered in this feedback form, participants are kindly requested not to introduce yourselves in the chat box, as this might distract the speaker. Well, these are just a few things to keep in mind. Thank you for your patience. Over to you, Nina.
Dan, now we have Reverend Dr. Binny Matthew, also a program coordinator for the welcome address. Over to you, Father.
Nisha, your mic is muted.
Mic. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, Father.
Respected Dr. Jacob Matthew, Principal of St. Berkman's College, distinguished Chief Speaker of the Day, Professor Clara A.B. Joseph from the University of Calgary, Canada, Professor P.J. Thomas, the head of the Department of English, esteemed professors, scholars, and all the participants of this international webinar. A very pleasant evening to you all. I cordially accord a hearty welcome to one and all to the special webinar organized by the Department of English, St. Berkman's College, on a post-colonial reading and colonialism in India before 1600 and its relevance today. The link between Christianity and colonialism has been the concern of many writings, both in the colonial and post-colonial settings. There are multiple angles or readings to interpret this historical connection. It is in this context that the topic of the webinar becomes relevant. First of all, let me welcome Professor Clara A.B. Joseph, who accepted our invitation and agreed to deliver this webinar lecture. Professor Joseph is an alumna of St. Berkman's College and a renowned scholar with many publications and books to her credit. Recent one, a book titled Christianity in India, The Anti-Colonial Turn, published by Routledge. On behalf of St. Berkman's College and the Department of English, I extend a hearty welcome to Professor Joseph to this webinar.
Thank you.
Dr. Jacob Matthew, the principal of St. Berkman's College, gives his wholehearted support to all the activities of the department. Despite his busy schedule, he found time to attend the webinar and agreed to give a short address prior to the session. I cordially welcome you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Professor P.J. Thomas, the head of the department, gives vibrancy to the department by organizing various activities. Actually, his support and initiative made this webinar possible. Welcome, you, sir. Let me also welcome Professor Vipin Cherian, the chief coordinator, who worked a lot towards the conduct of this webinar. A cordial welcome to you, sir. And a hearty welcome to all our colleagues who supported us and gave us the opportunity to coordinate this program. Finally, I welcome all the participants who showed interest to take part in this academic activity. Once again, I welcome all and wish you a fruitful session. I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. We welcome you to this program. Now, I would like to invite the principal of St. Berkman's College, Dr. Jacob Matthew, to deliver a few words of felicitation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dan. Good evening and good morning. The chief speaker of the day, Professor Clara A.B. Joseph, Professor P.J. Thomas, head of the Department of English, distinguished guests, dear professors, and all participants of the webinar. As we all know, we are going through a global pandemic scenario, and it has its effect on all fields, including the academic circle. In spite of all that, I would like to sincerely appreciate the efforts taken by the Department of English, its head, Professor P.J. Thomas, and vibrant, energetic teachers of the department in organizing this kind of webinars that are thought-provoking and insightful. The department has been conducting many webinars on diverse areas and has successfully brought so many renowned resource persons to this online platform for effectively imparting thoughts about various branches of knowledge. I congratulate once again the Department of English and the coordinators of this particular program. It is my privilege and pleasure to welcome Professor Clara A.B. Joseph, University of Calgary, to this webinar on behalf of St. Berkman's College community. Our college has produced so many people with great acclaim all these years, and it is indeed an honor to say that Professor Clara is an alumni of St. Berkman's College. As you all know, her research in the areas of post-colonization and Christianity has been such an instrumental contribution. There are so many arguments regarding the advent of Christianity in India, its colonial roots and all. Her works, Christianity in India and Anti-Colonial Turn, and The Agent of the Margin, clearly provide deep insights regarding the same and have been regarded as a monumental pieces in this area. Professor Clara Joseph compels us to reconsider at a fundamental level in relationship between Christianity, colonialism, and India. More broadly, she convincingly dismantles certain commonplace assumptions of both post-colonial studies and histories of world Christianity. So I think that Professor Clara is indeed the best choice to take you to the various shades of the interconnection between Christianity and post-colonialism in India before 1600 and its relevance today. Once again, I would like to appreciate the Department of English for bringing Professor Clara to this webinar, and I do hope that all the participants will have a fruitful session. Let me conclude. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now I would like to call upon Reverend Dr. Binny Matthew again to introduce the speaker of the day. So over to you, Father.
Thank you, Nina. It is indeed my privilege to introduce our keynote speaker of the day, Professor Clara A.B. Joseph. Dr. Joseph is Professor of English at the University of Calgary with specializations in post-colonial studies, literary theory, and literature and religion. She coordinates the interdisciplinary post-colonial studies research group, serves on the board of the journal Ariel, a review of international English literature, and is the review editor for the Canadian Ethnic Studies Journal. It is indeed an honor to say that she is an alumna of St. Berkman's College, 4th rank holder for MA English program, and an alumna of Assumption College, its Students' Union chair at one time. She is currently working on a manuscript on the freedom struggle of the Thomas Christians of India between 1600 and 1800, and a collection of poems about her mother-in-law. Clara A.B. Joseph is the author of The Agent in the Margin, Nayanthara Sehgal's Gandhian fiction, The Face of the Other, Dandelions for Baba, and Christianity in India, The Anti-Colonial Turn. So her co-edited collections include The Postcolonial and Globalization and Rethinking the Postcolonial and Globalization. Besides journal articles, she has published chapters on Christianity in India in the Oxford Handbook of Postcolonial Biblical Criticism and the Oxford Encyclopedia of the Bible and the Arts. Her research has earned her multiple grants of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada, SSHRC. Her book, The Agent in the Margin, received the awards to scholarly publications of the Canadian Federation for the Humanities and Social Sciences and SSHRC. Her another book, Christianity in India, The Anti-Colonial Turn, won honorable mention in 4th place in the category of History at the Catholic Press Association CPA 2020 Book Awards for the United States and Canada. Dr. Joseph is also a recipient of a Students' Union Teaching Excellence Award of the University of Calgary. Dr. Joseph's classes highlight the relevance that literature and theory have for issues of universal justice. Her teaching methodology in general involves lectures and in-class and online discussions. Her areas of academic interest include ethics and literary or cultural studies, postcolonial studies, literary and cultural theory, globalization, religion and literary and cultural studies, feminism, South Asian literature and culture, literatures in English or in translation from India, diasporic literatures, etc. So we are really blessed and graced to have Professor Clara as our resourceful speaker for this international webinar, and I cordially welcome her to deliver the keynote lecture. Now over to the speaker, Professor Joseph.
Thank you. Before I share my screen, I will share my screen in a moment. A few words of gratitude. Thank you, Dr. Jacob Matthew, Principal of St. Berkman's College. Thank you, Professor P.J. Thomas, Head of the Department of English, for contacting me for this webinar and for supporting the communication. My special thanks to Professor Vipin Cherian, who spent a lot of time and effort organizing the event, and to Reverend Dr. Binny Matthew, who, as I understand, assisted along. Thank you for the introduction and the welcome, Reverend Dr. Matthew. I'm grateful to my alma maters, St. Joseph's High School, Assumption College, and of course, St. Berkman's College of Changanacherry. I acknowledge that my paper is based on my book, Christianity in India, The Anti-Colonial Turn. The book was published in the UK and in the US by Routledge Press in 2019. The South Asian edition of the book will be coming out immediately. So if you are interested in purchasing the book, Routledge has kindly offered a 30% discount on its pricing for attendees of this webinar. I'm glad I was able to negotiate that with Routledge recently. Thank you, Routledge. Finally, I acknowledge the support of the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada on my research. Thank you, dear audience, for this opportunity to present to you my paper on Christianity and colonialism before 1600 and its relevance today. I wish you safety and health. My approach to the matter that I will be talking about will be through postcolonial studies, which simply lets me look at narratives of minority communities and power relationships during colonization. Do give me a couple of minutes right now. I have to proceed with the PowerPoint presentation of my lecture, and to be able to do that, I have to share my screen, so please bear with me. Thank you.
So, thank you, ma'am. Now it's time to move on to our question and answer session. So me and Dan will be simultaneously reading the questions from both Zoom and YouTube platform.
Thank you, Nina. Ma'am, well, the first question is from Sarjan. He has asked, what is your perspective on the advent of the Basel evangelical mission after 16th century in South India?
That is a very open question. And may I excuse myself from that question? I'm not particularly clear. I'm sure the person who asked the question has a few points in mind. And I would like to be excused from that question. Thank you. I don't know, you know, what exactly that question tends to elicit.
Sure, ma'am. The next question is from Dr. Alfonsa C.A. How do you explain the influence of existing caste system in treating converted Christians as a category not eligible to be treated as one among prominent Christian groups? Isn't it similar to your idea of other Christians or Thomas Christians in the view of Western Christianity?
Yes, if I understood the question correctly, you're asking about the casteism in our communities, including the Thomas Christian communities. Am I correct? I think I've understood. I'm going to interpret it that way, okay? So the question points to the inequalities and othering that had happened and continues to happen within society. Absolutely, in my paper, I have not discussed that, but it is the same process. It is people who experience this particular othering within society experience the same sort of colonization. And so there is colonization and there's neo-colonization. And these all have, they are complicated definitely by the caste inequalities and the injustices that go with them, certainly.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is from the head of our department, Professor P.J. Thomas. He has said, it's true that the history of St. Thomas Christians didn't get the attention of major post-colonial thinkers, though texts like Vartamana Pustakam, canons of Synod of Diampa existed for various reasons, some of which you mentioned here, like India means North India. In that case, your attempt is really critical and crucial. But another crucial issue is the origin of St. Thomas Christiana. What's your reading and scholarship on this issue? Ma'am, there's one more part. Shall I read it?
Please.
Another issue is the use of anti-colonial itself. You are using anti-Portuguese here as anti-colonial. Why do you think this anti-colonial spirit didn't remain in St. Thomas Christians? There's one more part. Shall I read it?
Mm-hmm.
Lastly, even when you consider St. Thomas Christians as one group, how do you explain the indigenous conflict between Orthodox Christians and Jacobites? That's it.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Okay, thank you for those questions. So that is the first one is on whether St. Thomas arrived on the shores of India to begin with. And I am not someone who researches on that. So whether Jesus Christ, stubborn apostle, the doubting Thomas, arrived on the shores of India, that's something I have not covered in this paper, and I don't cover it in my book either. Now, historians have affirmed that there has been an unbroken living tradition of a sizable community of Christians who claimed apostolic heritage through St. Thomas the Apostle from at least the 2nd century. Okay, so this is historical evidence. In this regard, the scholars refer to the witness of Panthenius as cited by Eusebius of Caesarea. According to Eusebius, Panthenius, being a well-known philosopher, was invited by a community of Christians of India. On arrival, Panthenius found them using the Gospel of Matthew written in the Hebrew language. I, however, will reference the Scottish theologian and evangelical missionary Claudius Buchanan, who wrote that there is as much evidence that St. Thomas went to India as there is that St. Peter went to Rome. All right, so that's my response to that first part of the question. The second part is the Thomas Christians have been, I'm presenting the Thomas Christians as anti-colonial in their, which is anti-Portuguese. That was the period of anti-Portuguese colonization. And then we have the period of the Dutch. So again, I have not touched that in this particular book, but that's my next project, working on that particular period. So if you don't see me also referring to the differences among the Thomas Christians, the schism of the Kunankutisha, of 1653 and so on, it is because my particular paper precedes that, and I'm working on the other manuscript. But what you can see is that even this so-called schism of the Thomas Christians was a highly colonial event, because there was the colonial situation of the Dutch versus the Portuguese, and who was going to win among these things, these two. And the archdeacon and the people who were split eventually played off one colonizer against the other, and so on. So, and when I say played off, there was also a lot of resistance in this playing off. You're fighting against one of the powers. So that continues. So the assumption that, Thomas Christians did not continue in the freedom struggle is, I think, a gross misunderstanding. And it is not just the Thomas Christians. Anyone who gets slapped in the face tends to react, and the community will react. And that reaction is known as resistance. And because this community was organized to begin with, because it had its army, they were not going to sit without reacting in an organized way. And that reaction is the freedom struggle that you can see consistently, continuously. And you can see this among all kinds of communities, not just the Thomas Christians. You can see it in all the communities. I have not spoken about the Latin Christians, so-called Latin Christians. They were in Kerala, at least historically, evidence from the 1300s onwards. So my area simply does not, I've not been able to cover as much, that is all. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question is from Nidhin John. Respected madam, thanks for your insightful session. Were there not some benefits as well from the Synod of Edinburgh, such as introduction of priestly celibacy in the Indian Church, introduction of personal confessions, increase in religious teaching, introduction of systematic training of priests, systematic division of the Christian community into different parishes, and an enhanced relationship with papal authority? Also, Synod discouraged weapon training among the community, and there were directives for suppression of casteism and untouchability in the community. Should such positive benefits be ignored?
Oh, I see. Yes, yeah. So there have been a few benefits, and certainly, no, they cannot be ignored. And you will find, I think, references to some of these in my book. Dr. John, thank you for bringing these points forward. And I think it's important to understand that in any relationships, you know, a lot of bad and a lot of good occur. And in the case of colonization, here when I teach postcolonial studies in Canada, sometimes I've had students say, but the British, they introduced the railway system. You know, India has one of the best railway systems in the world. So this is absolutely wonderful. I had another colleague actually tell me, you know, your country got put in the map. It was mapped. Agree, but the question is, why did we have these railways? Why did we have these maps so that raw material can move from one end to the ports and then get shipped off to the industries in the colonizers' world, right? So that there was a lot of destruction happening here. So there are different aspects for many of these matters. There is also there was a lot. I think in the area of the caste system, there were intentions of breaking caste systems. How effective they were is questionable, and it becomes very difficult when the colonizers' method is to continue breaking the system, when the colonizers' method is to inequality and injustice, then it is difficult to produce a just society anywhere in any caste under the colonial regime. In terms of celibacy, it has its blessings, and the immense commitment of priests to the celibate life is a great testimony politically as well. But at the same time, I must say that there were political reasons why celibacy was imposed during Portuguese colonization, because it was a very sure way to ensure that the Babylonian, so-called Babylonian archbishop, had nothing to do with the community, because if they had, they would make it celibacy optional, and that also would link back to mercantile policies and colonialism being impacted. So there's a lot of connection between all of these. Thank you. I'm sorry, I cannot hear you anymore.
Yes, ma'am, your next question is from Roxanne Chulikal. The superstition still exists among Thomas Christians despite the tireless efforts of the great venerable Archbishop Menzies. Anyone can fabricate the history if one has money and influence. Your opinion?
The superstition, I'm not sure what that's superstition. And fabricating history. So I'm not entirely sure what I would have loved it if that question were longer, just to get some clarity of these. So, but I'm going to try and respond based on the one or two terms there. Fabricating history. I actually like that term, fabricating history, because it indicates in a way that our words, the choices we make of texts, the narratives we write, have often are determined by our times, by our experiences, by the politics around us. And that is the case with all history, all narratives. Ideology narratives are placed within ideological and material context. So there is an influence of that. And yet we cannot be simplistic enough to assume that established presses would simply swallow anything anybody writes. By the way, a press such as Routledge does not take money from me in order to publish at all. So they would review it. They would send out my manuscript to peer reviewers, not of my choice, but of theirs. And they would decide, and they have to read and make sure that there's, scholarly rigor. And so it's based on such activities. That's the best, I guess, that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Philip Jose. He has said, it's quite a lengthy question. It has been observed that during the pre-Portuguese period, when Kerala Christians were under the episcopal see of the Persian Church, the title for the head of Kerala Christians, Jadiki Kartavyan, was dissolved and the new title, Akardeacon, transliteration of Archdeacon, was introduced for the leaders of the community. Archdeacon was in fact the lowest rank in the Persian Church's episcopal hierarchy. Some scholars have argued that this was nothing short of religious domination of the community. Some have even phrased it as religious colonialism of the Persian Church. Perhaps the fact that bishops for Kerala Christians invariably came from Persia bolsters this argument. So how far can we consider the Nasranis of the pre-Menesis period as the autonomous ethno-religious community who resisted external attempts at directed changes?
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. And I, salute the author for giving me the details on the question he's asking. The movement from Jadiki Kartavyan to Archdeacon, you see it as two different. There are scholars who do not necessarily see this big division. But I think one of the points here is whether there was religious colonization by the Persians, etc. That is a big debate among the Thomas Christians, and I hope that the Thomas Christians will continue the debate in very open ways. Such webinars can be opened up to the larger community and so on. How much they fought, it is, I think persons interested in that particular period would have to look at the various sources that would indicate any struggle. I do not believe that if there was colonization of any sort, that the community would have remained unsplit. So historically, scholars have tend to highlight the fact that the first biggest and the first genuine and the first, this is what they say, the first schism among the Thomas Christians occurred, they say, accordingly, in the 17th century. So for scholars to continuously repeat that particular point, it appears that if there were any divisions prior to that, those were temporary. So the community seems to have been one under the archbishop. The archbishops would come from the Levant, not always from Iran or Persia, but from there as well. What is repeatedly clarified in the documents that I have been able to look at is the priority of the archdeacon. And it is interesting, isn't it, that the archdeacon, who in the Babylonian, so-called Babylonian or Levant situation, has priority, has actually, a great priority, who's actually there next to the bishop, when he's like one of the sons of the archdeacon, and the Levant is like one of the sons of the bishop, because when the archbishop or bishop dies there, it is the archdeacon is one of those who carries the body. So he has a great deal of importance there. But what we know for sure is that within India, the archdeacon, the archdeacon was like a prince. He was the prince of the community. And later on, any time any question or any challenge was made against this archdeacon, the Thomas Christians rallied to support the archdeacon with their lives. So there is no question that there's no doubt about the priority of the archdeacon in the Thomas Christian community through many, many centuries. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our next question is from Dr. Pabitra Barali. What's your view on the unification of all Christians, original and converted, and bringing an end to the concept of other Christians?
Okay, thank you. What's my view on ecumenism? What's my view on bringing all Christians together? I think I don't believe there are too many Christians out there who believe, or scholars out there who believe that the world must be always divided. So currently it is a good idea, as Gandhi would say about Western civilization. But the thing is, how do we put it into practice and so on? And this would, I think, also lend itself to all kinds of divisions within all kinds of religions. And the terrible aspect that religions and nations can fight against each other with conceptions of difference. But I will also say that difference is not a bad idea. Difference is not a bad idea. And so I think that's something that we have to contemplate on further. I won't go into the detail, but I will reference just my article on difference because of nation, a nation because of differences, nation because of differences. And I have particularly the condition of Africa in that particular article, nation because of differences. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is from Nishad Isaac. He has asked, what is your starting point for your findings in the book? Does it begin from AD 52 with the arrival of St. Thomas, or from AD 1653? The Antiochian or the Persian link has affirmed the Nazrani community with cooperation, coexistence, and contributions. Have you been reluctant to affirm those?
Very interesting. I would love the person to actually, Naresh Sharma, I hope you will be able to simply indicate some of the ideas in the chat, and I will take that on as very important. I think what you're indicating is very important, and I need to open up to that. So please, if you can leave a couple of some more detail, some links in the chat, I will certainly look at that. Thank you.
Okay, ma'am, I think it's almost time to end the question answer sessions. There's been a lot of wonderful questions, and we ensure that all these questions will be provided to the speaker. Well, now I would like to invite Assistant Professor Amal Toms to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dan. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Respected and the most distinguished speaker of the day, Professor Clara Joseph, respected Principal Dr. Jacob Matthew, our beloved Head of the Department, Professor P.J. Thomas, coordinators of this webinar, Vipin Sir and Father Binny, honorable faculty members, teachers, and research scholars, beloved students of our college, SB College, and my dear participants from all sides of the planet. Warm greetings to you all from the Department of English, SB College. I deem it a great honor to address this intellectual gathering and propose the vote of thanks to all those who have helped us in making this special webinar an echoing success. First, I would like to propose a hearty vote of thanks to our chief guest and the resource person of the day, Professor Clara Joseph, for gracing today's webinar with such a thought-provoking and fetching lecture on Christianity and colonialism in India before 1600 and its contemporary relevance. Given from a post-colonial perspective, Professor Joseph struck at the roots of the misrepresentation of the Indian Christians, delivering the performance of Christianity in India from colonial appropriation. It was indeed a pleasure listening to you, ma'am. Moving on, the downy pinions of history and literature into those, say, the cloudy bowers of colonialism and Christianity, emerging with the solid pre-colonial Christian heritage of the Indians. That was indeed wonderful. And the conclusion with a note on the difference in the perception of history by the East and the West did throw some light into the idea of colonial history as another narrative. So just a glance at the chat box, brimming with questions and appreciations alike, denotes how captivating was Professor Joseph's lecture and how much it piqued the interest of the participants. So I thank you, ma'am, for being here, for answering our queries, and also for that profound and enlightening session. Thank you, ma'am. Now I take this opportunity to thank our principal, who, besides his rigorous schedule, found time to address not only this gathering, but numerous webinars that the Department of English conducted within this short span of 3 months. We thank you, sir, for the felicitation. I would also like to place on record our indebtedness to our beloved head of the department, Professor P.J. Thomas, sir, for his relentless support and guidance throughout the program. With a sumptuous array of literary wares at his hand, he invigorated the organizing team and made himself available whenever and wherever the team needed him. So I thank you, sir, for your generosity. Professor Vipin Cherian and Reverend Dr. Binny Matthew, the coordinators of this event, truly deserves our sincere thanks, and on behalf of you all, I offer them the same. Dear sirs, we know how passionately you are involved with the various activities regarding the proper organization and execution of this program. So on behalf of the department, I congratulate you both and offer our sincere appreciation of your industry and diligence. Also, I am grateful to Professor Jaran P. Sebastian of our department, Mr. Abhishek of Second Term English, and Mr. Tojo Sebastian of the Department of Malayalam for their technical assistance and kind presence throughout. And I thank all other faculty members who have directly or indirectly helped with the proper organization of the webinar. I'm also very happy to acknowledge our gratitude to the third BA Vocational English students, Dan and Nina, the hosts of this webinar, and numerous other webinars, as I mentioned earlier, who moderated this session exceptionally well. Thank you, Dan and Nina. Finally, all those wonderful participants who managed to spare some quality time with us, participated so actively in the session. We have received over 800 registrations, and we have more than 300 participants attending the webinar here in the Zoom platform alone, and a lot more of them watching the same on YouTube. So students, teachers, and research scholars from various parts of the globe, and also participants from various other non-academic fields. I take this opportunity to thank every one of them. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have now come to the end of our special lecture. It was indeed a pleasure to have you all with us today. Feedback forms are provided in the chat box. Please ensure you fill them accurately. So, and definitely the questions will be addressed to the speaker. So thank you for joining us today and have a wonderful time ahead.
Yes,
Yeah.
it went well. Yes.
Yes. And my only, I would have loved to hear others as well in a, a panel, and perhaps this is something we can do in the future, maybe even on something else.
Yeah, but I thought we'd be too late to have a panel. That's why we.
That's right. Yeah. Are we on the air? If we are on the air, maybe you want to cut off.
Yeah. So I know. But we will have it some other time.
Yes.